This is like my life. Starts out slow, then I have to run faster.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Oh, there we go. There we go. Hello, hello. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Cut the Shit, Cue the Genius show. I don't know which episode it is. It doesn't really matter anymore, but we are here because you are the geniuses. We are just helping you be more of a genius. I don't know if I said that right, but it's all good. We have an amazing topic today that everybody is ugly crying in the bathrooms about, beer in hand, wine in the other. And we definitely, Michelle Bruno, Liz Caruso, who is via audio, she is with us. She's here. But family comes first, and Riley had a little mishap, so we're taking care of the babies while we are taking care about this big topic about AV and why it is effing expensive and why are people still ugly crying about it. So we had to call in the big dog, the queso man. We're gonna have to tell the queso
the big cheese.
later.
Queso grande?
The big cheese.
We've never even shared queso together, Dolly.
You know what that means. The next time we see each other, I'll bring the chips, you'll bring the queso. So
that's the introduction to the show. Everybody gets a nickname. You are now Queso Man or Queso Grande.
Yeah, you're gonna have to change your LinkedIn, Mr. Butler. So, Josh, thank you for joining us on a very short notice, I might add. But you jumped on this topic. You're like, ooh, yeah, let's talk about this.
I've been watching your show for months. Just wondering when the time was gonna come when I was gonna get my shot.
You got your shot.
There's a long line, man.
I believe it. I believe it.
So we want to say hi to our usuals, John, Chen, Rachel, Sean. Hello, everyone. And let us know how you feel about AV these days with events and so forth. So keep the chat going. So first question, Josh, what the hell is happening out there when it comes to AV?
Wow, that is a big loaded question, right? I know that we're all experiencing different things. I think the first question is, how did we get here? I think is really important. And we got here because there's a lot of money in events. And for decades, that money has just been getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we've got more people with an interest in seeing those numbers grow. And then you have a kind of a culture within, I think, meeting industry where a couple things at play here. There's rinse and repeat, which I think is a huge problem for the industry as a whole. And then you have this, so you take your budget or your plan from last year and you put it down on the table, and then you go to your provider and you say, okay, now what do you have new this year? And so you start from the same formula, but then you demand that the provider add something new, flashy, exciting, so that your GS can stand out, so that people can walk away from your event with oh my gosh, that was amazing. Those two things combined have really forced these prices up and up and up and up and up. And I think as there was consolidation leading up to the pandemic, you were okay if some numbers were really high because you were getting this bucket over here for free, right? You were okay paying too much for AV because you were getting this service over here for free. And then boom, pandemic, right? And boom, inflation. So you've got some of these big companies that lost billions of dollars. And there's really only one way to recover from that. You got to have extra sales, or you got to have higher prices to recover from those billions of dollars in losses. So all of those things, all of that is conflating right now. All of that is together right now to create this kind of perfect storm for the meeting planner, which is ridiculously high prices across the board and what feels like monopolistic practices throughout the industry. And unfortunately, it's coming at a time when meeting planners have smaller budgets and a greater demand for services. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. I mean, Bruno, you're on mute, but you look like you have a question, or I see smoke coming
Yeah,
up.
you know me so well. I'm
I
trying to
do.
prevent the whole audience from hearing my dog bark.
It doesn't matter.
So,
We're good.
some of this stems from the age-old practice of having in-house, proprietary contractors inside the venue. And we used to be able to get around that contractually, we planners, by just, removing the clause that says you have to use who we have. So 2 questions. Can we still do that? Do you know? Are there other ways maybe 3 questions, to get around that sort of inflation/extortion in some cases? And isn't there, are these contractors in league with the venues also, who are allowing them to charge, the higher extortionary rates, let's just say, because, they lost money too.
This has been around forever. And actually, there's another word for this. It's called unions.
Mm, yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, unions are great. They have their need, and I don't want to like
Mhm.
totally trash unions, but it's a similar kind of situation. There's a contract with a venue. You have to use that like labor pool, which is the union. Those
Right.
union rates are negotiated at really, really high prices across the board. Of course, they've been negotiating collectively for 40, 50, 60 plus years. And so after a while, those contracts become pretty lucrative. So that's another kind of factor in this. It's almost not like free market, like in fact, none of this is free market if we kind of really think about it. You can absolutely bring in your own vendors in most places. I'm sure there are situations where you're locked in, but I think even if you are, again, upfront about your needs, I think that there's going to be flexibility there. The problem, though, is that they're charging these fees when you try and bring in your own stuff. As a supplier, as a vendor myself, Falcon Events, I haven't said that. We tried to bring in a single piece of truss. Okay, now a single piece of truss to a not to be named supported in-house AV at a venue. And we were charged $1,300 just to bring a single piece of truss in. And then we are like, oh, we're not going to pay that. Or like, okay, well, you have to buy our truss. Well, that truss was still $1,000, and we drove our truss across the country to get to the venue, and it just sat outside on our van while we paid $1,000 for their truss. In another situation, we were told, okay, yeah, you can come in, you can bring your own vendor, which was us, but we're going to charge you thousands of dollars to operate the elevator. So
they just try to make money anyway. So it's like corkage. You want to bring your own AV, you want to bring your own equipment. We're going to charge you anyway. And we're going to make it so impossible that either or you're going to be paying a ton of money. I mean, you're talking equipment. You're not even talking about, we're going to talk about labor because I think that's a huge issue too. So it's like, there's places, like you said, union or otherwise, where you can't even touch anything. And I can totally see it where like one of us is like, it's easy for us to like figure something out on the system. We don't have to wait for, an AV tech support, for example, to come after a lunch break or God forbid on a weekend, to do it for you. So the whole idea of, if we are collectively trying to bring events and experiences to a point where everybody's working and collaborating together, don't you think some of these like guidelines or rules or scenarios that we're discussing right now should be like thrown out the window. Like it shows no sort of collaboration or collaborative way of doing business in order to have a successful event.
Yeah, the only groups collectively bargaining right now are the labor teams and the in-house providers, right?
Uh-huh.
Meeting planners should collectively bargain, right? Why aren't we
Yeah.
doing that? In fact, this is the way. This is the only way to fix this problem, and that
What
is
is
if
it?
if we all come together and push back. Right? That's the only way. I mean, meeting planners are so disjointed, and sure, we've got our organizations. I'm not sure if the organizations are being like active in the space, and why? Because they're supported 100% by these
The
same
AV
monopoly
companies
Now the
owners.
Uber sponsors and the
Yeah.
Uber partners
and the
and the
convention
Uber.
centers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Brian says it's capitalism, in-house and hotel, and finding new profit streams. Hi, Brian. You're absolutely right. We're giving you a high five.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Is it capitalism? I don't know. I mean, like, I understand they're taking advantage of the rules that are present, but it's not free market capitalism. I mean, they're not like letting other people compete with them on an even plane. They're absolutely creating roadblocks and strategies to prevent competition, and I think that is very anti-capitalism. Um, but
It's
I
a
know
that's an excellent point,
a,
Joshua.
a
Excellent
lot of
point.
people also are mentioning services and how it comes along with this. And you're absolutely right. There are so many levers that these entities have to make sure they excise the revenue that they need from you, right? Like,
Mhm.
okay, sure, you can bring in your AV, but you're going to pay $20,000 for a 20 megabit internet line,
Right.
or it's rigging. Like, no, you can have your full AV, but we have to do the rigging. So there's always going to be ways that they can make adjustments, and often they're in contracts with the hotel. And actually, this is a way that you might be able to negotiate some better deals, and that is leverage some of your hotel spend, especially if it's an in-house provider. Leverage some of your hotel spend to get a better price with the AV company or the internet or the rigging or whatever. In fact, in every single one of our customers, when we tell them like push back on the service price, so like the internet, for instance, and every single time they push back, they do get a better rate. In some cases, if they would have gone with the initial estimate from the provider, they would have paid $30,000-$40,000 in
Mhm.
connectivity costs. But then when they went back, it's like, whoa, hold on, I'm putting 500 rooms in your hotel. I'm spending $100,000 on food and beverage. Like, what can be done here? 9 times out of 10, that price is coming down. So I think you have to negotiate, negotiate, negotiate. You have to be firm with what you need, and really try and understand all of those levers that they have available to them, and then use that to your advantage.
So what are, go ahead.
No, I mean, that sort of cost shifting has always existed. You get your entrance unit for free, but you have to pay, so much for whatever. And at the end of the day, it all filters down and exhibitors pay more. So at one point, exhibitors were up in arms and did complain, and some venues and unions and all kinds of suppliers had to actually negotiate and come down on that. But that is really the way that it's always been done. I hate it when those words come out of my mouth. I hate it. But I think we're kind of in a new situation now where we really want face-to-face events back. And I know we need to recoup revenue, but unless you have a really big event like CES and you can have everybody in the supply chain singing your tune, it's just not going to work to sort of, manage the levers.
And you're only going to get the best deal if you understand what levers that vendor has access to and really where their profit stream lies. I mean, you kind of said it all comes down to the exhibition. And I think in many ways that's true, especially for the big, what I call big AV, is because there's such a huge cash flow with the expo that so much profit kind of gets hidden there that a lot of these providers, at least pre-pandemic, were able to take losses on some of the additional services as long as they had the expo, because there was so much cash coming through the expo, right? And I think meeting planners took advantage of this for a very, very long time. And this is one of the ways in which suppliers have changed the game a little bit, because coming out of the pandemic, I think there was a lot of top-down direction and with a lot of these big AV providers to no longer give those like free things or lost leader things in order to capture the expo. They really felt like they needed their profit margin across all of these services. And I've heard this from both the hotel side and also the supplier side. At one of these really big AV firms, we have a CEO that, if you look historically, has been more like numbers focused, not necessarily a production person or a marketing person. Like, they were like a numbers person. And I think that's really needed coming out of the pandemic for some of these companies, because they had to figure out a way to make more money and cut costs, etc. And one of those costs is giving away things for free. So I see it happening internally on the big AV side. And then I was at an event just a few weeks ago talking to a director of technology at a hotel, and they were echoing the same thing. Pre-pandemic, big AV was a lot more flexible. Coming out of pandemic, that flexibility is almost gone. So they're not seeing the reduction in prices, right? The big AV companies are sticking to their numbers. And I think that's kind of what you see. Like, I don't know if we said it live, but there was an example of a $25,000 quote that turned into a $100,000 quote for the exact same job. And I think likely that $25,000 quote probably had a line item at the bottom that was like, big discount, 50,000, or whatever it
Free
was.
Corona coaster kind of thing. And
Yeah.
now that we're real, and it's like, yeah, we need to make we need to make our money back. And I get that. And I think a couple of people are even commenting on that. So Josh, you mentioned this about negotiation, and some of our listeners also did the same. So what in your mind, or your advice, what is the time to negotiate on AV? Because I have a feeling that if you're going in and you are like just going into a venue, getting your contract ready, etc., and from the gate you say, hey, by the way, I'm bringing in my own AV, they're probably going to try to put the rates up on everything else that you want from the venue. What are your thoughts? Like, what's the perfect timing?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of meeting planners go about this kind of the wrong order. They'll go to their executives and they'll get the plan, right?
The budget.
Well, not okay. They might get a budget, but what comes first often is the C-suite, the executive team saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be awesome if," or "Man, wouldn't it be great if we had this?" Right? Oh, the executive team really wants to be in Key West this year, or right? There's always some directive from the bosses that pre-exists budget. And so there's an implication that you have to accomplish this goal before even understanding what the budget is, right? And so the meeting planners often do the same thing with the suppliers. They'll come in with the vision and not even like touching budget discussions yet, right? Here's the vision, and now AV provider, you have to do this with this budget. I think that happens a lot of the time.
Right.
And we need to kind of start with the budget, right? We need to kind of understand what we have in play and then try and accomplish the best that we can do with those numbers.
That's a huge issue.
Yeah. Go ahead, Liz.
I was just going to say, I can't tell you how many clients we've worked with where we ask those questions up front, and the answer is almost never that they have a budget. They want to see what they can build. And they're trying to, I think a lot of them use that as a reason why, a way to save, right? Like, oh, maybe we'll come in way under what we think. They think it's just magically going to happen. But I think it's an entire shift in the strategy of an event to think about what you can achieve in the budget. It's like completely backwards from how every single client we work with operates. And it sounds great, but the other problem I see is that our industry, everything is priced so differently. You know, you can get one microphone quoted from, you know, $8 to $250, you know, so it's hard even as a planner to talk your clients backwards like that, because you can achieve all kinds of different things for all kinds of different budgets. It ends up being who you're partnering with and what their prices are. It's a whole, you know, if this whole event planning process was more scientific, that'd be great. But we're talking about an art here. It's
And you know why it's an art? Because of the lack of transparency. The art is
that's
almost
exactly right
the,
on every level in our industry.
the art is almost like the trick. You know, it's almost like the way that they can it's smoke and mirrors, right? Like, don't look over here, look over here. And that's not a good way to operate any industry. I mean, the lack of transparency in this industry is quite astonishing. And so you mentioned a word I think is important, and that's partner. You've got to have a really good, strong partner. And I think those can come in different flavors and sizes. You know, your AV company might be a really great partner for you, right? So we're not trying to bash AV companies. You could have a really great AV company or tech company or consultants or whatever. Like, whatever that partner looks like for you, I think it's really important that you have one. Someone that can be honest with you, someone that knows the industry and that can kind of assess your overall plan and how you might be getting taken advantage of. But you've got to have a partner. And the best partners right now are ones that have new approaches. And I think this is what's driving the cost so much across the board. It's because these companies, especially the big AV companies, big incumbent companies that were huge pre-pandemic, right? They have a model, they have a process. And 90% of the time, those processes are no longer valid for this new world. You know, the world changed. It did, for better or for worse. We're in a different place than we are in 2019. And so we need new processes. We need new models. We need new prices. And it's because, look, there's new gear. And this is one thing that drives me crazy, right? The same company that you used to do your event in 2019, where they were bringing in like huge cases on wheels, and, you know, they had to have huge semi trucks trucked across the country, switchers that were $25,000 a piece, that required an expert that has been in the industry for 30 years with raises every single year, right? That was the norm. But now we have equipment that takes that $25,000 box and puts it into a tiny little square like this that you can get from any provider for, you know, $300, or go order one on Amazon for $300. Like that's how the kind of reduction of, you know, technology, that's the service technology does for us, right? It reduces, it makes things easier. And that has happened. Things are easier now. It's easier to produce good AV. It's easier to produce a good live stream or a well-produced virtual type situation. And yet the prices haven't reflected that.
No, the prices haven't reflected that. Brian, you're right. New gear does cost money. I think what Josh is also saying is that you need to take a look, or even have a transparent conversation with your existing AV companies or production companies, and also seek new ones that are doing things in a different manner. And potentially, this is where I think event professionals hate to get out of their comfort zone. If they've been working with companies for a very long time, or an account manager for a very long time. That's why we're in the relationship business, right? You don't want to let go of Kelly, who has taken care of you since 1985, for example. Oh my God, that's a long time. But what I'm saying is, this is where we actually do have to do homework from our side and educate ourselves. So, like, during the Corona Coaster, we went and educated ourselves through Google Sheets, Liz's favorite, and everything else about virtual platforms. I think this is the time where maybe we need to do it on production equipment, Wi-Fi equipment, etc. Like Josh, what you're saying is like on Amazon, yeah, you can get something, or like the new cameras, for example, and ask about it, test it out at your events. So we're talking AV cost when it comes to equipment and the truss and all of that. Let's shift a little bit in regards to on-site team members or the support. One thing that I've heard so many times is that the AV support team that you have during your event, they don't know what they're doing. They're not with it. They're not flexible. They don't know the event. They don't know how to handle the equipment, you know? So what do we do there? What are the best practices there? Or how do we, and there might be also a shortage of staff. I don't know.
I don't think there's any shortages anymore. And I don't think that should be a factor in pricing at this point. So that's not part of this equation. What was the original question?
The AV tech support team that you have at the event.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're not onboarded the right way. They, you know, they're still on their phones while they should be checking on speakers and all that good stuff. And they're just like, this is not a general statement, but like it is a challenge with so many event organizers.
So this is another way in which we're kind of backwards, because the big AV, they're going to bring the heaviest equipment they have from across the country on a truck. Well, let's not even talk about the sustainability of that or how that affects so many things. But then they're going to hire cheap local labor.
Right.
It should be the other way around. I guarantee you there are big projectors, big truss, big staging, local. You probably don't need to truck that across the country. But the people, the most important aspect of your entire plan,
those are the ones who should be traveling in.
Those are the people that you need consistency with,
right?
Right? That
Gosh, you might want to have a steak dinner instead of eating at the buffet. Are you kidding me? The cost on that, it's crazy.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Here we go. There's a challenge.
Yeah, no steak dinners for the tech.
The old way is I'm going to put 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people in a room. Okay. And that's not necessary anymore. Right. With the new technology and the new skill set. That's another thing. Like if you rely on a old AV person, that skill set is based in the 80s, that's not going to help you out now, right? You need a new technician who has a new set of skills that is much more like layered and multifaceted, and not like, oh, I am only audio, I am only video. No, that doesn't fly anymore. Okay. You need technicians that can do all of those and stream at the same time and bring in some remote techs on Zoom or whatever. And that's possible, right? You don't need 5 or 6 people anymore. You might need 2 or 3. Another example is with cameras. And this, you're seeing this more and more, which is great. But you don't need an operator on every camera. You need a single operator managing 4, 5, 6 robotic cameras. And I understand that might not be the perfect use case for your situation. But by and large, especially in the conference space, when we're talking about some medical thing on screen, you know, PTZ cameras work just fine, and you need one person. And then you need one person to handle your streaming and your recording and your remote guests. And then, you know, one person to handle audio, and boom, you're good in that room, which could be a really, really large room. I mean, I understand there's other examples like GSs that could get really crazy, but by and large, you can reduce your staffing across the board. Another really interesting way that we are combating this is that you can do a lot remotely now. We did a huge show actually with a big AV firm that was in one of the biggest convention centers, and all they had was floaters going to all these breakout rooms. They're like 20, 30, 40 breakout rooms, huge show, right? So they had a floater that was going to 4 or 5 rooms, just making sure that the AV was set, making sure the projector, the computer was attached to the projector, the mics were on, etc. Everything else was handled remotely. Content that went to screen, remote guests, playback, right? All of this was handled by a remote tech in a centralized facility that was managed by a centralized kind of process. And there's no travel costs, right? There's no per diem costs.
You probably gave some event profs and organizers that are listening in right now a heart attack.
No, I think I hope you gave AV companies, a glimpse into the future, because everything is moving in that direction. Remote, everything, remote surgery for.
So we have 2 speeds here. We got 2 things going, right?
Yeah.
And we're flipping the script. But the 2 things that are going is you have AV companies that are still operating the traditional way. Mm-hmm. We're going to call it the 2019 way. How's that, right? Yeah. And then you have event organizers that are supposedly operating the 2024 way. And so I don't know how you're going to bridge that gap between them quickly, or because I know for clients, there are some organizers that the cost and the estimates that they're getting in front of them for events can make or break them. Some even have to cancel their events because they can't, float that cost, no matter if they have a budget or they went to the C-suite or the C-suite said, no, okay, forget the 2-story size LED screen that we want, etc. Just take us to Key West, for example. So how are we going to collectively bridge that gap? How do we educate, and how do we push the AV companies and production companies to get with it for 2024?
I think the AV companies have to get off their high horse, for one.
Okay.
Because
I thought you were going to say unicorn, but horses are we're fine. We're the horses.
Look, AV has kind of become a commodity, right? You can get a microphone from everywhere. You can get a camera from everywhere. You can get local labor. It's not too much of a challenge, right? The real value is in the expertise. The value is in the partnership. And if you can kind of detach the AV bucket from that, right? If you can really think of AV as just like something you can get anywhere, then it helps you shift the focus of your value, right, over to the expertise, over to the partnership. And I think you will, especially in the long run, see a lot more value from that situation than, oh, I've got to have the perfect 20-foot LED screen on stage with the 0.7 millimeter LED screens that look like a beautiful television if you're standing right in front of it. That's not the most important thing. Oh man, this is actually a much bigger discussion, right? For an association, what is the most important thing for an association? What is their primary directive?
You're absolutely right. It's a different discussion. And I could tell from your face that you're wanting this to go on for 2 more hours, because we're not going to even get into okay, are you designing a production for yourself or for the audience? Did your audience say, I will not come to your conference if you do not have that 2-story high LED? And you tell me that you spent $200,000 on it, and you're not giving back to we're not going to get into that CSR and to the community and blah, blah, blah.
And you charge me $5,000 to attend because there's this giant, stage set.
And you still serve me bad coffee.
Yeah.
We're not going to get into the coffee.
Free food.
But so last tips here. Are we going to move this industry forward? Do we need to sign a petition? Are we signing a petition? I want to sign a petition.
I really think that's needed. And actually when we did our session together at PCMA in January, right? Like this was kind of the big push. Like there needs to be action here and there needs to be collective action. Like
All
we all
right.
kind of have to speak in one voice to move this needle.
Okay. I
I
see a
wouldn't mind
petition.
watching the keynote on my own phone because most people are looking at their phones anyway while the keynote's up there. I
That's
don't want to
true.
put you out of business, Joshua, but I'm just saying that, it should be explained to us, planners and organizers, and, even as audience members and as exhibitors in a trade show. This is what the trade-off is. If you don't want this other stuff, which is not important to you, then maybe we can talk. Maybe we can do some design things. Obviously it's not my area of expertise. However, as Dahlia would say, we need to rip off the Band-Aid, start a petition,
Yes.
get our pitchforks, run to the whatever, and at least start talking about it, because it's, the way that things are going with AI, we're going to lose our jobs anyway, maybe, if we don't do what you said and shift to the value of, skilled labor, the value of strategy, the value of creativity,
The value of remote production.
From knowing something, like being an expert at something for a change, versus here are these boxes of electronics that we can get anywhere.
Sean said it all. We ride at dawn. We're good.
I love that.
Yes.
Liz, do you have any last comments? Liz, rescue us.
I'm ready for the petition. Whoever's going to get it ready, I'm down.
We're doing a petition. We're right at dawn. Josh, you bring the queso. I'll bring the chips, and someone has to bring the
Egyptian
margaritas.
breakfast. That's what you're bringing. Bring that Egyptian breakfast. That is,
that's in November, honey. Anyway, this has been fantastic. The chat has been on fire. So like, I think we might need a part 2, Butler. What do you think?
Absolutely. This is
cool.
a never-ending discussion. So
no, it isn't. And I do think a petition will be put together. So here we go. Thank you, Josh, for being with us. Sherry's the first one to sign. Here we go. Liz, Bruno, this has been fantastic. And we got more episodes coming. We're actually also putting together a program for June that we will tell you all about very, very soon. I like to build the suspense so that you guys can ask me. But if you want to know more about it, or if you want to guess, go on LinkedIn and tag us and have a blast guessing what we're working on for the month of June. If you'd like to be a guest speaker, Arthur, I got your notes. Please let us know what kind of topics you would like to speak on, anything that's keeping you up at night, or if you want to sign another petition, you came to the right place here. So, but thank you. Have a wonderful Thursday. And thank you for joining us for Cut the Shit, Cue the Genius.